Okay, we should get the stream started. Just leave that link there so everyone can see that. Whoops, that's not the right one. We might just wait a couple more minutes and see if we can get more people jumping in the stream. Oh good, we've got a bunch of people in the Twitch stream. That's awesome. Okay. Well, we'll wait a few more minutes and then we'll get started with the stream. Just before we do get started, if you want to have a head start, you can go to make.gamefruit.com/learn/waka-race. That's the link that will open up the template game that we'll be going through in today's tutorial, where we want to make a Waka racing game. We'll learn a little bit about keyboard inputs, velocity and acceleration, and we'll use if statements to check for win conditions. I'll give you a little preview of what we'll be going through, and I'll put the link in the chat as well just before we get started. So that was make.gamefruit.com/learn/waka-race if you wanted to see that. Okay, sorry about that guy. Okay. So let's have a little look at the game here. That is the Waka race game that we'll be working on. I'll go and load that up just before we get started here. And here we go, here's the game. So we've got a couple of Waka here, and there's this island that we've got to get to. And we might end up extending this game a little bit, depending on how quick we get through what we want to make. And if you have suggestions for the game, feel free to chuck them in the chat as well once we get started. So we've got these two Waka, and basically we want to go and code them to get them to race each other, and we'll be editing the script on those, which is pretty empty. So this is what we're dealing with. A bit of a pre-built game that we can add some code to. Alrighty. Well, let's get started, shall we? Alright. So we will be using Gamefroot. Okay, welcome to Gamefruit's Code Talk, a live digital technology stream on how to code real video games powered by real game developers. I'm Dave and I'm your host. Today we're going to be talking about making a Waka race game where we will use some keyboard inputs. We'll also deal with velocity and acceleration to make some objects move in our game, some Waka to race each other. And we'll also use, we'll be checking conditions with if statements to see which Waka has reached the finish line first. So I've got a little link up on the stream that you should be able to see, make.gamefruit.com/learn/waka-race. That is the link to the little game template that we will be working on today. I will leave it up. I'll leave it up for a few minutes, but it might start to get in the way, so I might remove it a little while, but I'll put those links in the chat. You will need to go to that link to work on the template game that we're going to be working on. So let's browse to that, /learn/Waka-race. Okay. Here we are. So we've got our Waka, and they are on a beach here, and they're going to want to race each other across the ocean here so they can get to this island over here. Now the game world has these objects in it, but they aren't programmed to do anything. We can test that out by clicking play up in the top right corner there and seeing what happens. Okay, now pressing keys on the keyboard, clicking, none of that does anything, which is the problem that we want to solve. So what do we want to do first? Well, we want to first get our player 1, we've got our player 2 Waka down here. We'll get our player 1 Waka working first. So to add programming to this, we want to right click on that Waka and select edit script. Okay, now we've got our big empty workspace in here, and this little message player 1 blocks go here. So we need some blocks here. What do we want to do? Well, we want to be able to press a key on our keyboard to make our Waka move. Key press blocks are under events, and events are like the triggers that we need for the rest of our blocks to work. And if we, in our events here, if we scroll down a little under keyboard, we've got when backspace delete is pressed. This is the block that we want, so let's drag that out. When backspace delete is pressed. Okay, now we want to change backspace delete to, what key should we use for our player 1? I'm going to use the D key, but you could use any of these keys really, up to you. So when the D key is pressed, I want this Waka to move to the right. Now there's a couple of different ways we could do that. We could just say position the Waka across a bit from where it already was, which would be fine, but it wouldn't be using the physics engine that Gamefroot has. So, big surprise, we'll be going to physics, because we want to use the built-in physics engine we've got. We've got things like velocity, acceleration, gravity. We want to use that. Let's start with some velocity, meaning speed in a direction. So we'll grab set velocity x 0 from physics. We'll drag it out, and we need to make sure connects in that block there when D is pressed. Velocity x. Well, x, what else do we have in here? We've got y as well. That's vertical. X is horizontal. We want to keep that as x. And 0, well, a velocity x of 0 is not moving anywhere. That's not going anywhere. We want to make that, what number could we put in there? Let's try 100, depending on how fast you want your Waka to go. I think 100 is going to be pretty good for this. So let's give that a test. If we click play, and then we press the D key, we can see our Waka starts moving, and this other Waka doesn't, and then the Waka gets to the end and then just sails through that island. What we could add next is a little bit of resistance. So instead of just having it so that we press our D key once and then our Waka just goes, if I refresh the game here, you'll be able to see. Again, I just press the D key once and the Waka just going by itself. We could make it so that you need to keep mashing that key, you need to keep pressing it multiple times to keep the Waka moving. And the way we could do that is by adding a force that's fighting against the Waka. We could think of this as like an ocean current, or like wind. That might be a better way of thinking about it. A gust blowing against us, so we've got to keep fighting against that. What we'll use is acceleration, and we'll set up some acceleration when the level starts. So we need an event block. If we go to events, we want to grab this block here. when the level starts. We can drag that out, and I like to put the when the level starts block above my other blocks because it happens first when the level starts. Then we want to set up some acceleration. Gravity is also acceleration, but we want to have some horizontal acceleration going. So from physics, if we scroll down a little under motion, we want set acceleration x 0. Let's drag that out. And what would be a good number? Well, you might want to experiment. I found that minus 700 was a pretty good wind speed to be blowing against the Waka here. Acceleration x of minus 700. So let's play that now and see how that turns out. Okay, so pressing the D key, and that's a good strong wind. I have to really press the D key a lot to keep, as you can see, I could just slip straight back. Now if we played with that acceleration number a little, maybe if we tried minus 200, we could see what effect that would have. And I can move pretty quick to this other island, and it's not a lot of effort. So I do like that negative 700. I think that's a good strong force. Up to you though. If you're finding it really hard to get your Waka moving, you want to decrease that acceleration number, or maybe increase the velocity number. Up to you. I would definitely recommend playing with those numbers. Now we want our player 2 to also be able to move. So what we'll do is we'll assume that your player 2 is going to be another person on your keyboard, and we'll let them use the right arrow key, which is on the other side of the keyboard. And then after that, we'll see if we can get you able to win the game, and then we'll see if we can program some AI for our player 2. So let's close our player 1 script, and now would be a really good time to save our game. If we go File, Save Game, and let's call this Waka Race for Stream. Okay, now let's go to our player 2, edit that script. Right click, edit script. Okay, so we need those same blocks. So let's go to events and grab when the level starts. And then from physics, we wanted under motion, set acceleration x. And that was negative 700. Okay, good. And then we wanted to press a key to make our Waka move. So if we go to events again, and under keyboard we want when backspace delete is pressed. Drag that out. And this key, let's make it the right arrow key. So click on backspace delete and find right arrow. There it is. And when we press that key, let's get some velocity applied to this Waka. That's from physics, under motion, set velocity x 0, and let's change that to 100 as well. And if you want to keep your game fair, you need to have these numbers the same on both Waka. And if you can't quite remember what they were, you could close the script, save that, and edit the player 1 script again. So that was minus 700 and 100. Okay, let's play the game, and I'm going to see if I can race myself. Okay, so I've got right arrow key and D. Let's go. Let's see which hand has the fastest trigger finger. It's actually a bit of a struggle, but I think it looks like the right hand is winning. That would make sense. I am right-handed. So player 2 just wins. Now our game doesn't actually know that which player won. We do have a couple of player 1 win screens and player 2 win screens. So if we close our game now, if we look at level 2, this is for player 1 wins, and level 3 is for when player 2 wins. So we've already got these you win screens we can take advantage of. So if we go back to level 1, we want to change the screen, the level that the game is showing, depending on which Waka wins the race. Now, how do we know if the Waka has won the race? Well, they will have got up to that island that we have over here. Now, how do we know if they've reached the island? Well, we can check. We can say, hey Waka, keep checking your horizontal position, your X position, and if it gets all the way over here, then that means you should win and we'll send you to the next level. And we know what the X position is over here. If we have a look, we've got these two numbers, X and Y, in our layers panel here above properties. We can see the X position over here is at 900. So as soon as they hit the beach on this other island, that's 900X. So we need to remember that, 900X. Okay, let's go back to, let's do this on player 1. Then we can copy the code over to player 2. So we'll right click on our player 1 Waka, edit that script. Now we want to add a new block in here, and we want this block to constantly be running so that we can then check the position of the Waka. And the clue there is constantly. So if we go to events, we want this block constantly. And this block runs its commands over and over and over and over again while the game is running. Unlike these other two blocks, when the level starts or when D is pressed, these blocks run their commands when the level starts or when D is pressed. This one will just keep going over and over, which is good. That's what we want. Now, to check the X position of the Waka, we need an if block. In programming, the if statement is very important. It allows you to make decisions with logic. So if we go to control flow, we want this block under conditionals, if do. And the keyword there, conditionals, that gives us a bit of a clue. That lets us check conditions. And we want to connect that into the constantly block there. So now we're constantly checking a condition. What condition are we checking? Well, we haven't put it in there yet, but we want to know if my X position, the Waka's X position, is greater than, what was that number that we checked on our level? It was 900. So we want to know, is my X position greater than 900? That means I've traveled further than the beach. Okay, so we need a greater than block, which is from operators. Operators here, all of our maths blocks, we want this equals block up the top. Drag that into the if block, and the equals block, we need to click on that equals and change it to a greater than, where you've got the hungry alligator wants to eat the number on the left. So if something is greater than something else, and in the left here we want this to say X position of myself. How do we get our X position? That is from transform, this red category here. We want this block, X position of myself. Let's drag that out into that greater than block on the left side. If X position of myself is greater than, and then in here we want this to say 900, so we need a number block to pop into there. Let's go to operators and grab this number block. Let's drag that out. Okay, and this 0, we want to change that to 900. Okay, now we've got our logic set up perfectly. What is the action that we want to do? Well, we want to send you to the level for player 1 winning, because we are editing the player 1 script. Now, I'm pretty sure that's level 2, but I'm just going to go check that. So let's close that script and save that. And is level 2? Yes, level 2 is the player 1 win screen. Perfect. So we can go back to level 1 and we can edit our player 1 script, and we can add our block in that we need, which is from control flow, go to next level. Let's drag that go to next level block into the if block, and we want to change next. We actually want to drag this next level block into the trash, and we're going to put a number in there. So we want to go to level 2, so we're going to put the number 2 in there. We go to operators, grab that 0, drag that into the go to block. We'll say go to 2. That'll send us to level 2. Perfect. Now, if I didn't have this block inside the if block, if I had perhaps put it underneath the if block, the constantly block here is going to run over and over and over. It's going to check this condition, and then it's going to move on and do the next thing, which is go to level 2. We don't want that. We need to make sure it's inside the if block, because the blocks inside here will only run if this condition is true. So that's how that needs to be arranged. Okay, let's play the game now and see if player 1 can win the game. We press play here. And I'm going to have to spam that key, get my player to go across. It is actually quite a bit of work. So you might want to change those numbers, up to you. And there we go. Player 1 wins. Okay, good. Now how about player 2? Well, we haven't added that into our player 2 script yet, have we? I'll just confirm that by getting my player 2 up to the beach and see if player 2 can win. And no, player 2 has gone way past the beach and didn't win yet. So we need to add this code from player 1 into our player 2. So let's go and do that now. We can close our script and save that. Okay, now's a good time to save our game as well. If we click File, Save Game. Now, let's go to our player 2 and edit that script. And we wanted our constantly block to be running in our player 2 as well. So we'll go to Events and grab constantly. And we wanted to be checking that condition. So that's control flow if do. Drag that into the constantly block there. And then we wanted to know if a number was greater than another number. So that's from operators. And we want that equals block. And then we wanted this equals to be a greater than. And in the left side, from transform, we wanted X position of myself. There it is, X position of myself. And over on the right side, we wanted a 900 block. Okay, let's go to operators and grab that number, put it in there. Okay, now if the X position of this Waka is greater than 900, we want to go to another level. So that's from control flow. Let's drag that block into there, and instead of saying next level, drag that in the trash. We want to put a number in here, so we can right click on our 900 and duplicate that. And what level do we want to go to? Level 3. So let's say go to 3. Okay. Let's play test that now. Make sure player 2 can win as well. And just at the halfway mark. And player 2 wins. Okay, that works perfect. Now, what if you're lonely and you don't have any friends to play with you? Well, that's sad. I'm sure you can make some friends, but in the meantime, we can code our own friend to play against us. let's make some AI, some artificial intelligence. It's going to be pretty basic, but it will get our player 2 moving. So let's go and right click on our player 2, and we're going to tweak that code just a little bit. Okay, so here our player 2 is saying when the right arrow is pressed, set velocity x 100. How can we get our player 2 to do something automatically by itself? Well, there's a few different things we could do. One is we could have the player 2 move every second, maybe, or every half a second, every 500 milliseconds, which would kind of simulate pressing a key. So if we go to events, we've got this block here, every 100 milliseconds. If we drag that out, and let's put that down here, and we could say, let's disable our when the right arrow key is pressed block. If we right click on it and click disable block, that code won't run, but it will still be there, so we can enable it later if we want. I'm going to right click on set velocity x and duplicate that. And I'm going to say every 100 milliseconds set the velocity x to 100. So that'll just be like pressing that key a lot. Now, how fast is 100 milliseconds? Well, that's 10 times a second. Let's see what that looks like. I'm predicting it's going to be pretty hard to fight against player 2 when they're going that fast. Let's play it and see. So every 100 millisecond, they will be going forwards. And yes, they're much faster than me. Although, not by too much. But there's no way I can win against that guy. Way too fast. Okay, well, let's try tweaking the number a little, shall we? If we close our game here, and instead of every 100 milliseconds, let's make it every 200 milliseconds. So that'll be 5 times a second. Let's play that now. Okay, you can see player 2 is really struggling there. Pretty easy to beat them then, isn't it? Yes, pretty easy to beat them. What could we do in this case? Maybe we could have a difficulty level. That could be fun to try to make. Okay, let's make a difficulty level here. What we'll do when the game starts, we'll ask you what you want your difficulty level to be, from, let's say, from 1 to 3. And if they type in 3, player 2 will go really fast. We'll make that 100 milliseconds. If they type in 1, that's the easy level, and they'll go every 200 milliseconds. Or maybe let's make it even easier. Let's make it 300 milliseconds. So that's only 3 times a second. Should be easy to beat that. Okay, how are we going to get this difficulty level to work? Well, first of all, when the level starts, we want to ask the player, hey, how difficult do you want this player 2 to be? And we can do that by popping up a little alert box that lets you type in something and send information to the web page. That block is from operators. And under operators, if we scroll down a little, we want user input, and it's going to be at the bottom of number, so numeric. Operators numeric. Down the bottom here, we want prompt for number with message. Okay, this is the block we want. Let's drag that out. We're not going to connect it into anything yet. Prompt for number with message. What this block does is it asks you a question or tells you something, and then the person viewing the web page gets to type something in as a response. So my question in here, I'm going to type from 1 to 3, how difficult do you want player 2 to be? Or maybe how fast? From 1 to 3, how fast do you want player 2 to be? Maybe we could even make that from 1 to 10. How about we do that? From 1 to 10, how fast do you want player 2 to be? Let's make 1 is very fast, 10 is very slow. Okay, now we need to connect this block into something. What we will do is store their answer. So when this pops up, it's going to say, hey, how fast do you want player 2 to be? And then I'll type in a number and click OK. What we want to do is store that number as a variable. So let's go to variables, and we're going to make a new variable called player speed. So let's click create variable. We'll call this, or we'll call this Waka speed because it is our Waka. Okay, Waka speed, and the type here is going to be a number. We've got a bunch of different data types we can keep track of, but we want this to be a number. Okay, and then we get our variable created here. We want this block, set number Waka speed 2. Let's drag that out. And when the level starts, we're going to set Waka speed 2, whatever the user types in that window. Okay, let's let's do one more thing. We're going to no, actually, let's just test this. We'll see how this looks. Okay, let's click play. Okay, there we go. We can see this pops up and it says from 1 to 10, how fast do you want player 2 to be? 1 is very fast, 10 is very slow. What if I type in 10 here? What happens? Well, the Waka is still just moving at the speed that I programmed it. The number that I typed didn't actually have any influence on it. So what I want to do is use that variable that I just stored and have that modify the Waka speed. Okay, so we've saved our Waka speed when the level starts. Now, down here, we want to take advantage of that. There's two things we could change. One is we could change the rate, or every millisecond, the amount of milliseconds that we wait, or I could change the velocity x. I think I'm just going to change the number of milliseconds. So a really fast player 2 is basically going, pressing that key, pretending to press the key really fast. So instead of every 200 milliseconds, we want to somehow use our number variable to modify the amount of milliseconds. And I think what we should do is multiply Waka speed, because it's from 1 to 10, right? So if we multiply that by 10, 10? Do we want to multiply it by 10? Let's try multiplying it by 10 and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we need a multiply block from operators. We grab this plus block from operators, drag it out, change it to a times block. We need to multiply. Okay, and then we can get our 200 there from the every 200 milliseconds block. Drag that out into the left there, and then we can drag our multiplication block back in. Now, I'm going to change that 200 to a 100, and it's going to be 100 times and then Waka speed. So let's go to variables and grab number Waka speed. So this will just get or read whatever the value is, and the value is set up here. Okay. So if the player 2 Waka speed is 1, which is very fast, it'll be 100 times 1, and that is 100 milliseconds. But if it's really slow, that'll be 10, and 100 times 10 is 1,000 milliseconds, so that'll go every 1 second. Okay, let's test it out and see what happens. From 1 to 10, how fast do I want player 2 to be? Let's try 5, right in the middle there. And it's not moving. Well, let's try again. If I play it again, I'll try 1. Let's try 1. Here we go. Still not moving. Okay, well, we might just need to change what we're doing here. Perhaps this block doesn't like having variable amounts of time. What could we do instead? Here's what we could do. We'd replace this block with a function. So let's drag out our velocity and our multiplication there, and we'll throw this every 100 milliseconds away. What we will do is run a function. We'll run a function every amount of milliseconds using this number that we've got there multiplied. Okay, so we'll go to functions and we'll grab to do something and drag that out. This is how we create a function. And a function is basically just a little chunk of reusable code that we can use to do something. Well, let's name this. We click on do something and rename that to move forwards. Good. And then we can connect in our set velocity x. That's what move forwards will do. And then once we do move forwards, we want to tell it to repeat itself after this many milliseconds. So if we go to control flow and scroll down a little until we find this block after 100 milliseconds have passed, control flow time after 100 milliseconds have passed, we'll drag that out underneath our velocity block there after 100 milliseconds. Now we want to change this 100 milliseconds, throw that away, replace it with our multiplication we did there. So this is our variable amount of milliseconds. After that amount of milliseconds has passed, we want to move forwards again. So the function is actually telling itself to run, and then it will just keep looping over and over. So we'll go to functions and we'll grab move forwards and connect that into there after the milliseconds. Good. Now this function, when it runs, it will keep running. It'll keep perpetuating itself. But we need to first give it a kickstart and run it once. Then it can keep running. So we'll run it when the level starts, after we figure out what our Waka speed is. So we'll go to functions and grab move forwards, put that underneath our Waka speed, and then that should do the trick. Let's play that now to see if we can get some variable speed on our player 2. Let's try 8. 8 is going to be pretty slow. There we go, that works. And look, 8 is, well, the player 2 there is really struggling, only moving once every 800 milliseconds. So we might want to tweak our multiplication a little bit, right? If I press the refresh button there again, and if I make it 1 this time, we can see that is pretty fast. That is actually pretty fast. But I would like 1 to be even faster than that. So I'm going to close my game there, and I'm just going to tweak this number here that we're multiplying by Waka speed. So if Waka speed is from 1 to 10, and we're multiplying that by 100 to get our duration, let's change, maybe, let's try 80. 80 times Waka speed, or maybe even 50. I'm thinking 50 might be the way to go. Because it'll be 50 milliseconds, which is 20 times a second for the fastest speed, and it'll be 500 milliseconds for the slowest speed. I think that's a pretty good range. So if I set this to 1, should be super speedy. Yep, there's no way to beat that unless you were really fast. And if we try 10, that'll be really slow. And we can see, yeah, pretty easy to beat that. What's something, oh, maybe I could use this to figure out how quickly I can press a key. What if we try 4? Well, I can definitely beat 4. What about 3? I can just beat 3. Well, let's just prove it, shall I? Get to the end there. There we go. What if I wonder if I can beat 2. Let's try that, 2. Oh, I didn't start pressing quick enough, did I? Let's try 2 again, and then gotta be quick. I think that's about as quickly as I can press. Oh, you know what we could try? Putting a decimal point in there. What if I said 2.5? Okay, yeah, I think that's about as fast as I can press. 2.5. So if we close our game here and look, 50 times 2.5, what is that? That's wait, I said 2.5, didn't I? 50 times 2.5, that's 150. So I can click at about 150 milliseconds. Well, that's pretty cool. That's how we can get a bit of an AI going. I know that it's not a super complex AI, but it is moving the player around by itself, which is pretty cool. Let's close that script and save that. Then we'll go and save our game file save. Always good to keep saving your work. And if anyone had any questions about Gamefroot or how to do any of the stuff we talked about today or anything that you're working on in Gamefroot, feel free to chuck that in the chat. And then we might wrap up the stream. There's probably a bunch of other things we could add to a game like this. Maybe we could have this island work as kind of like a lap system, and when you get to the island, you go back to here, it teleports you back to here, and you get 1 lap, and then you could keep going for 10 laps perhaps. Or maybe when you get over to here, the acceleration could change directions, then you have to come back again over to here. Maybe that would be cool, and the boat would flip around and you have to keep going back and forth, kind of like a swimming race. That could be pretty cool. Well, let's just take one more look at that code if anyone was interested in seeing how that worked. We got the variable set up, we got the input working, the number input, and then we got the function with a variable timer on it. Yes, if you yes, it is under the link. So we got that variable function there. Move forwards. Well, I hope that was. I hope you learned something there. And I think we will close the stream down. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.